Coming up now on your spoiler-free wrestling news rundown, both John Cena and Randy Orton have commented on the allegations against Vince McMahon. TNA Wrestling is having a bit of a revolt problem with its roster. We'll get more into that in this video as well. And we've got a health update on Jim Ross. All that and more coming up now. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. And let's start off talking about some of the comments that John Cena made about Vince McMahon during an appearance on the Howard Stern show on Wednesday. So we've talked in previous videos about comments that have been made by Bret Hart, Mick Foley regarding the allegations around McMahon, and how you can kind of tell that it's difficult for some of these guys to wrestle with the idea that a person who made them rich and famous and successful could be this Harvey Weinstein type character. And you could tell based on Cena's comments that, well, he's certainly reserving judgment for the time being and says he's taking things day by day. But let's go over what what Cena said on the Howard Stern show today. Up on your screen, these are some transcriptions that is from Cage Side Seats, the website. And so Cena, this was like an hour into his conversation with Howard Stern. They had talked about his acting career, how he stays in shape. Finally, about an hour in, Howard Stern asks John Cena about Vince McMahon, and Cena replied, "I can say this. I'm a big advocate of love and friendship and honesty and communication, but in the same breath, I'm also a big advocate of accountability. I think you," he said to Howard Stern, "explained it well. If someone's behavior lies so far outside your value system that the balance shifts of like, I can't operate in a world where this works, that's the end result of being accountable." So I'm not completely sure what he meant by that, but Stern had been talking about how he had friends in the entertainment industry. Then some things came out about them, and he had to say, all right, I can't associate with you anymore. And so Stern basically asked Cena, like, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle this situation with someone who you say is your friend? And up on the screen now is Cena's response. He said, "Right now, what I'm going to do is love the person I love, be their friend. And by that, it means like, hey, I love you, but you have a hill to climb. There's the saying of you don't know who your friends are until the shit hits the fan or your back's against the wall. That doesn't make any of what's going on any easier to swallow, but just telling somebody like, hey, I love you, man, this is going to be a hill to climb. We're going to see what happens, and that's that. It sounds so cliche, but it has to be one day at a time. But at the same token, I've openly said I love the guy. I have a great relationship with the guy, so that's that." And he kind of goes on a little bit and talks about, it's largely my constructive operating with honesty and communication. Those are strong leads to handling any problem or achievement. The whole thing is super unfortunate and it sucks. It sucks. It deals with an individual I love and an entity I love. I want everyone to have the experience that I have. Not only do I tell a friend that I love them, but I switch to the entity and say, how can I help? So there was a lot of just nonsense in what Cena said here. But basically, I think the gist of it is he's saying, I haven't turned my back on Vince McMahon yet. He's my friend, told him I love him, and we're going to see how things shake out. Which I think, in my interpretation, listening to the interview, was him sort of leaving the door open to what Stern was saying about how you have to stop associating with someone if their behavior lies so far outside your value system. But Cena was also very big to say, like, I believe in love and friendship. And it's difficult to hear these comments because that many of these people, Bret Hart, John Cena, Mick Foley, they owe a lot to McMahon. They owe their success, their professional success, their financial success, their fame to Vince McMahon. They don't want to believe that he's capable of some of the things that he is alleged to have done. And having to wrestle with that, I think, is probably very, very difficult for some of them. Another person who seems to be having some trouble with the situation is Randy Orton. And Randy Orton did an interview with Justin Barrasso from SportsIllustrated.com that was published today being Wednesday. It was really good. I definitely recommend that you should read this interview. I'll put the link in the show notes if I remember, which I didn't on the last video. But Orton said this about the allegations regarding Vince McMahon. He said, "I've got to say this. I wouldn't be where I am without Vince McMahon taking a chance on me a handful of times. I would not be where I am today without Vince McMahon. But fuck, I'm reading this shit. What you've seen and read, I've seen and read. As far as commenting on that, it fucking hurts my heart. It hurts my heart." Okay, so up on your screen now, this is a website that was created by the Pentus and Mullins law firm, and these are personal injury lawyers, which I know don't have the greatest of reputations, but these guys advertise themselves on one of the nation's leading law firms fighting sex abuse. They've been in business for over 35 years. They have an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, and they assisted George Floyd's family in the aftermath of George Floyd's death at the hands of Minnesota police. So this is a top-notch law firm. And they are obviously investing money here into finding potential victims of WWE. And they are advertising you may be entitled to significant compensation. So, of course, the end game here is a class action lawsuit. So that's ongoing. We'll keep you up to date with any updates that we hear from them. And then Paul Roma spoke with News Nation's Ashley Banfield recently. If you're not familiar with Paul Roma, he wrestled with WWE from 1987 to 1991. Around like 93, he ended up in WCW, was actually a member of the Four Horsemen for a period. He would later team with Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff as what were they called? They were Pretty Wonderful or something like that, sort of closer into the mid and late 90s there. So he spoke with News Nation's Ashley Banfield, and he talked about some things that have been out there for a while regarding WWE in the 80s, and there being male WWE wrestlers who were propositioned, so to speak, by higher ups from within the company. So Roma said on this show, it wasn't so much Vince as it was the people that he had surrounding him. You're talking about an industry where you have young, good-looking, well-built men in the ring, half naked, 3/4 naked, actually. So yeah, I mean, it left a door open. He had a lot of people around him, vice presidents and bookers that were very much into that. And they put you in a really, really bad situation, especially once you started making some money. You kind of get comfortable with that, and then you find out that your job's on the line. Either do it or get fired. And I witnessed quite a few that walked away. The money wasn't worth it for them to go that route, so to speak. When Roma was asked to clarify what the wrestlers were asked to do, he responded, they were asked to do things, sexual things, with other men that they did not want to do, my former partner being one of them. He tells this story about being in a cab ride in Washington, and there was another wrestler who was obviously very upset and just kept saying, it's not worth it, it's not worth it. And the guy ended up not showing up to the next TV taping. He also talked about how his partner in the Young Stallions, Jim Powers, I guess some executives within WWE had taken a liking to Jim Powers. So he tells this story, and I don't think Roma comes off that well here, because here's what Roma said about his former partner, Jim Powers, being propositioned by people within WWE. He said, one of my former partners, when I was part of the Young Stallions, he was propositioned. He said he went to one of the agents and told them what happened. And I said, why would you do that? You just ratted on both of us. So he kind of threw us both under the bus when we were just starting out. And actually what he's saying here is very indicative of why people don't come forward. Roma didn't want Jim Powers going forward about someone propositioning him because he was worried about their team's push. He said, even my former partner, Same thing. They offered him money, drugs, just lay on your back. You don't have to do a thing. And he came running right to me when I came into TV. And I said, dude, what are you going to do? And he said, oh, I already spoke to Arnold. And I said, well, why did you do that? You just killed our team. What do you think he's going to do? He's just going to go to the people that propositioned you. And Roma also said that him and Mario Mancini, he used to work in WWE as well, and they used to run a wrestling school together in Connecticut. Mancini and Paul Roma did. And Mancini was on this News Nation show not long ago and said that he's aware of an incident that took place in WWE that is worse than anything in the Janelle Grant lawsuit. And he wouldn't go any farther, but Roma confirmed that there is such an incident that he's aware of. And Roma said, I really shouldn't right now in terms of like talk about it. But yes, I do know what it is, and it is worse. Mario and I are really surprised. We spoke about it, and we're surprised that no one has come forward. But on the flip side, I think that they are of an age now that they may be married and have kids, and they don't want to open Pandora's box, and I can't blame them. The long and short of this story is there have been some terrible, terrible things happening in WWE for a very long time. All right, there's been some interesting things going on at TNA Wrestling recently. Of course, not long ago, they fired their former company president, Scott D'Amore, and this was not well received by the members of the TNA Wrestling roster. They had sent a letter to Anthem Sports and Entertainment that was in support of Scott D'Amore. Recently, many of them tweeted out emojis of an hourglass online, which some took as a sign or as a hint that they would be leaving the company when their contracts expire. Now, yesterday, TNA Wrestling sent out a graphic that said Josh Alexander re-signs with TNA Wrestling. However, his wife, Jade Chung, quickly responded to that it wasn't a case of Josh Alexander re-signing with TNA Wrestling. TNA Wrestling exercised their option year on Alexander. So, you know how in sports you might sign, or like an athlete might sign a 2-year deal, and then there's a team option for a 3rd year. This was very similar. He had signed a deal. There was a TNA option a year, and TNA Wrestling exercised that option. Now, a report from Fightful came out that not only that, but Josh Alexander had asked TNA Wrestling not to pick up the option year in his contract. So it's not like he was asking to be released. He was just saying, hey, please don't pick up this option year. Either I want to go elsewhere or I want to test free agency. And TNA Wrestling was like, nah, we are exercising this option on you. So not a great start for management with TNA Wrestling. Looks like they've got a bit of a revolting. They've got a revolt on their hands from the TNA Wrestling roster, which is really too bad. It seemed like that they were a promotion riding a wave of momentum, especially off that Hard to Kill show and those shows in Las Vegas. And now it's a case where who knows how much longer any of these guys are going to be in TNA Wrestling. It sounds like by this time next year, this could be a completely different roster. All right, we got a bit of a health update for Jim Ross. So up on your screen now, this is a tweet that Jim Ross sent. Is that today? Yesterday evening. Ross wrote, first full day on Jack's Beach and out of the rehab facility, using a cane for now, improving daily, broken hip, responding well, excited for my future with AEW. So it doesn't seem like it, but there's actually a lot to unpack with Ross's tweet there. So he mentioned here that his broken hip is responding well. That's actually the first time he's mentioned that he broke his hip. He did say that he had had cancer surgery on his right hip. All went well. Thanks for your love and support. So that was on February 1st. Then 5 days later, he tweeted out that he'd had another successful surgery. Hopefully need your prayers. That was on February 5th. So he had surgery first on February 1st, and now he's out of the rehab facility for the first day now on February 20th. So Ross he's had a few weeks now of dealing with health problems. I guess he had cancer in his hip, and his hip was broken. He had had another surgery that may have been. Missy Hyatt responded that JR is stronger than skin cancer. So I'm wondering if that means she's aware that this was another skin cancer surgery or related to the skin cancer issues that he's dealt with previously. So, who knows? But some good news from this tweet. Well, it's all good news. He's out, he's recovering. But he wrote that excited for my future with AEW. And that's pretty interesting because his contract with AEW was set to expire on February 14th. He had mentioned this like on his podcast months before it was to expire, that February 14th, that's the day it expires. So it sounds like, considering it was February 20th that he sent this out, that he's probably reached an agreement to continue on with the promotion. And there has been talk, well, Ross has mentioned it on his podcast, that he's very hopeful that him and Tony Schiavone will get to call Sting's final match, which will take place March 3rd at AEW Revolution. So all the best to Jim Ross. All right, by no means am I saying that this is the most important story of the day, but Vanilla Ice had put out a video yesterday saying that he had just purchased a lowrider used by Eddie Guerrero for $15,000. And however, this was very much disputed by Chavo Guerrero, who wrote on Twitter today, sorry, Ice, I own the original car that Eddie and I came out to on TV, 1963 SS Impala convertible. John Cena bought it after and then gave it to me after Eddie's death. Then I had it frame off resto. Vanilla Ice, Eddie didn't even own yours, nor did he ever use it on TV. So, sounds like Vanilla Ice got ripped off. And finally, AEW Tonight comes from the BOK Center or the Bach Center, I don't know, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And up on your screen now, WrestleTix says that 2,868 tickets have been distributed to this week's show. This is AEW's first time in Tulsa. Not a lot announced for the show, really. I mean, there's a big trios match featuring Rob Van Dam teaming up with Hook and Hangman Page, going up against Samoa Joe, Swerve Strickland, and Brian Cage. So that'll be pretty good. But then the only other really confirmed match is that you'll have the Blackpool Combat Club's Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli going up against FTR. That'll be a good match too. But then after that, nothing else is really announced except for that Toni Storm will be in action, and so will her upcoming opponent at AEW Revolution, Deonna Purrazzo. Neither Storm nor Purrazzo's opponents for tonight has been announced. I don't know. Tony Khan might announce something closer to the show starting. We'll just have to see. But that's going to do it for this video, everyone. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you again next video. Thanks again.